Choose a character class. Every player character must choose a class. Most people encountered in the game have no character class at all and are known as zero-level characters. A character's class cannot be changed once play begins. 4 of the player character classes are human: Cleric, Fighter, Magic User, and Specialist. Non-humans are classes unto themselves, and those available to the players are known as demi-humans: Dwarf, Elf, and Halfling. Well, people, on today's episode of Lamentations, I'm going to have to look into classes. I can't just pick, I need to know more, and so do you. First up on the character class options is Cleric, because it's like alphabetical. I'm going to just show you this. Boom. There it is. There's your page on Cleric. Not very complex. Not seemingly a lot of options, but we'll talk about that. Some religions teach the people how to receive the grace of their loving deity. Some religions teach the people how to survive the wrath of a cruel and vicious deity. Some religions simply strive to teach the truth about creation. All religions serving true powers have one thing in common: orders of those selected few who are not mere priests, but spiritual warriors endowed by their deity with mystic powers. These few are known as clerics. Clerics can cast spells from the cleric spell list. Full details of a cleric's magical abilities are detailed in the magic section. Some of you who maybe come from a D&D-ish or other fantasy role-playing game background might be thinking that this is pretty limited. That might be your first reaction. You might be saying to yourself, Bill, what about druids? There are no druids in this game, but guess what? If you want to make a druid, you make a cleric, and then you have him dress in raggedy robes and carry around a staff and have friends who are animals. There. Druids were really just clerics, but they were like pagan clerics. But Bill, what about warlocks? If you want to make a warlock in Lamentations of the Flame Princess, you make a cleric. And you make up a backstory where you made a pact with a powerful whatever you want, and you talk it out with the DM and you make it part of your character's story. Don't spend a lot of time on the backstory though, because you're probably going to die. So to really understand a cleric, we do need to flip over to the magic section. We need to take a look at cleric spells and how they all work. Cleric magic is divinely inspired and is granted to clerics through prayer. Whether these prayers are granted to clerics by higher powers, if these higher powers are what the cleric believes them to be, or if the cleric spells are merely ritualized forms of sympathetic magic, are all subjects frequently debated. Only one thing is for sure: cleric magic is indeed magic of a sort. Even though cleric spells are formalized in a way that magic user spells are not, their results cannot be duplicated by non-clerics. The process of gaining, preparing, and casting cleric spells is indeed formalized, but only within a religion. Different religions and even different sects within the same religion execute their magic rituals differently from one another. That kind of circles back to my point about what if you want to make sort of a druid or a warlock or a witch. Basically, that all kind of falls into the cleric category. It's just different skins. It's just different flavor. And I think that this set of paragraphs in this section on page 75 sort of support that idea, that you can work out a different skin or a different flavor or concept for your cleric to make it more suitable for you. You just have to kind of work out the story with your DM, and a clever DM can actually like integrate that into the ongoing storyline or campaign and add that into the world or the setting in which you're playing in your game. So, beginning spells. Clerics can cast any spell on their spell list and do not use spell books. So, all first level clerics have full access to all first level spells, for instance. That's pretty similar to previous older editions of D&D, and I think kind of even current editions with Divine Magic. Preparing spells each day. A cleric must rest for 6 continuous hours before preparing spells. After resting, the cleric must meditate and pray for a number of hours equal to the highest spell level being prepared. This process is sometimes called memorizing spells. What I like about this is if you think of in like more recent editions of D&D, a long rest is required to recuperate your divine magic, and that's usually 8 hours. What I like about this is that they say 6 hours is the long rest, and then you need additional time to memorize your spells. So realistically, in like a campaign setting, you could have your cleric go to sleep in their, the adventurer's camp for 6 hours, and people take their turns on watch. And then the cleric wakes up early, and begins their prayers and meditations to recuperate their spells. And maybe at low level, that only takes a little while, an hour. Maybe second level, 2 hours. Third level, So once they start accessing those higher level spells, they have to spend more time recuperating their stuff. Now imagine that you have a cleric in a Lamentations game that has really high level spells. Think about like spending 4 hours to prepare your spells. Whew, that's a lot of time, man. But, that also provides time for other classes to do other things during that downtime, right? Maybe the fighters are sharpening their swords. I don't know. But you know what I mean? So the point is that like the higher level spell requires more time prepping. And that does kind of make your adventuring time more crucial. Time is more crucial in this game, mechanically. It's more challenging. Spells remain in memory until they are cast, and once they are cast, the power of the spell leaves the caster. However, the same spell can be prepared multiple times. The cleric's spell charts give the maximum number of spells that can be memorized at each level, and the cleric can never have more than this number prepared at one time. A cleric can simply dismiss spells from his mind uncast, clearing the spell slot for other spells when preparing them as usual. Reversible spells must be prepared as either the straight version or the reversed version. The decision cannot be made at the time of casting. That's another kind of hardcore element with this game. You can't just like, oh, I'm going to use this version. I have a slot for it. You have to prepare it specifically. You have to specify. A cleric can only safely prepare spells once every 24 hours. The mind simply cannot handle any more, which I think is a great limiting factor. It makes things a little more challenging. Now, the next couple pages for clerics under this magic section deal with other components of their abilities with magic. So spell scrolls, writing a scroll, creating holy water, researching a spell, time of magical activities, and casting spells. You can read this on your own. And if you don't own this book, you can get a free PDF of it and you can read it on your own time. But I think what's cool about it is that it makes these things valuable. I think in a lot of kind of more streamlined, easier fantasy role-playing games, sometimes just, a shopping spree solves all these problems. But the fact that the mechanics are in here for you as a player to use with your cleric, to take advantage of, to develop scrolls, to create your own holy water, and the process, the time, the costs, all of those things are explained. I think that's tremendously valuable. There's one little blurb here that I do want to read called Casting Spells. Spells are cast by a combination of mental concentration, gesticulation, and chanting. In order to cast a spell, a cleric must clutch a holy symbol of his religion and be able to chant freely. A character that is bound, gagged, silenced, or otherwise unable to gesture or speak cannot cast spells. Casting a spell cannot be done secretly, stealthily, or disguised as another activity. The actions necessary to casting a spell will be obvious to all. Another fine point, because I think there are a lot of spells in other games where clerics can do that, or magic users, other spellcasting classes can cast spells in a stealthy sort of way without detection. I like the fact that the casting of spells in general in this game is a more intense process. So the spell descriptions in this book are alphabetical. You can see from each spell whether it's a magic user or a cleric spell, what the level is, all that kind of stuff. So I think those kind of components there allow you as a player to look at the option of cleric and decide what's going to matter. And with my character that I've rolled up, I haven't yet decided what I want to make. But cleric is an option because I do have a 14 wisdom and a 14 wisdom's pretty good. I also have a 14 strength, which means my cleric could be somewhat valuable in melee combat. I have a 14 dexterity, which means my character could be somewhat valuable in ranged combat. And all of those things added together could make a cool cleric. But that's something that I'm going to have to decide after I've explored all of the classes, which we'll be doing in the next few videos. So stick around, learn more about Lamentations of the Flame Princess with me as I go through this process. And as always, I ask you to consider liking and subscribing this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more.